Well, thank you so much, everyone, and welcome to our final Zoom town hall with Sue Prentiss, who is running for state senate. We are joined tonight by 6 women in leadership, in addition to Sue and myself, and we're going to have a really great conversation. I'm looking forward to this, a roundtable discussion with women in leadership. And so what we're going to do this evening is we'll open it up, and each of these fabulous women in leadership is going to have a chance to offer a little introduction, talk about some of their experiences as a woman in leadership. And then I've got some questions that I have come up with. And then if we have time, we'll do some questions from anyone who's watching and wants to ask a question. And as we've been trying to do over the last, I think this is our 7th one, then we'll wrap up right around 8 o'clock. The primary is coming up in just a few more days, 5 days left. That's one handful of days. It's coming up on Tuesday, and we're really excited about the final, looking at this final weekend ahead and getting ready to, a lot of people have already cast their ballots, and some people are going to be casting their ballots on Tuesday, but it's always exciting. At least for me, I always think of elections as the most wonderful time of the year. I know, it almost makes me want to sing. So I'd like to start it out by turning it over to Sue and ask her if she'll just open things up with some remarks tonight. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Karen, and hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here and have this have the opportunity to have you not only been part of tonight, really, but part of my when I think about this family of women leaders in the Upper Valley and in New Hampshire. I think we're all part of a team, whether we're doing the work in our community, in the region, or for the entire state. So to have this opportunity to dialogue with you all tonight about maybe our different approaches, some of the way we see our successes, some of the ways we've had to over time really stand up and fight for ourselves in the discussion to be heard. I'm really interested in hearing more about that from each of you. We are there's an investment that we need to make. It's part of what we've already started making. We're going to continue making, which is investing in gender, and that's. I stole that line from the New Hampshire Women's Foundation, but I'm proud that I stole it from them because it makes a lot of sense. This is what we do. So I just want to open tonight by saying thank you. As you know, for you all know, but just for any of our viewers, again, I'm running for state senate here in District 5. I am a paramedic. I'm a mother. I'm a current city councilor, and I'm a former mayor of the city of Lebanon, and I also served as the assistant mayor. I was the first female bureau chief of emergency medical services in the state of New Hampshire. Now, there are other female bureau chiefs, chiefs of EMS in their own respective states, and I value and honor their work, but I was the first one to wear a tie, just like the men, at the New Hampshire Fire Academy. And they were great colleagues, but I'm really proud of that work. I think that now more than ever, my experience in dealing with complex issues on the local level, as well as that time at the Fire Academy, which led me to leading on our responsible SARS and H1N1, is really applicable. So we'll get into more of that later, but I want to turn it over to Karen and hear from you all else about your leadership in the Upper Valley, in your communities, and for the benefit of the entire state of New Hampshire.
Thank you so much, Sue. And I think, being the first female bureau chief of emergency medical services at the Department of Safety for New Hampshire, I know that's a male-dominated field. And so rising to the top, you must have had some interesting experiences along the way. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists in turn. And so we're going to start off, I said that we would go alphabetically, and thankfully we actually did a dry run of the alphabetical situation because I didn't have it quite right. Shocking. All right, but we're going to start out with Susan Almy. Sue Almy is one of the longest serving state representatives in the New Hampshire State House. She served on the Election Law Committee, Finance Committee for 10 terms. She's served on the Ways and Means Committee, including 4 terms as its chair. Now, Ways and Means doesn't necessarily mean a lot to people outside of the legislature, but it's a very powerful committee that has to do with the budget and revenue, and it's incredibly important. Sue brings an interesting background. She actually worked for 22 years as a rural and an agricultural researcher and developer in Africa and Latin America. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, I'm Susan for the duration of this, so we can keep ourselves separate. I wanted to go back a little. I was 24 years old. That was 50 years ago. I was 24 years old when women's liberation started to take hold outside of the universities in this country. And this country was pretty much a leader in a lot of it, though not in getting women up to high posts in elected offices. I got a PhD basically because it was the only way a woman could have some kind of control over her own work. In my first 2 jobs, I had to create and develop ideas for my male bosses, who then took the credit for them for decades after. And then in my 4th job, I got a breakthrough when the man I went to work with, who I really wanted to work with, died suddenly, and I had to run a complex project for 5 years by myself. So when I came home to a legislature which was also dominated by older men, but with a fantastic first woman speaker, Republican, I vacillated between serving as an assistant to the men, which is what I taught myself to do in the early days, and speaking out for myself. Fortunately, there was a group of strong women that came in at the same time. Terry Norelli was among them. She was our 2nd woman speaker and the first Democratic speaker in 150 years. And I gradually asserted myself more. Nowadays, I get irritated when men over 50 still talk over me sometimes, even after 4 terms as chair of Ways and Means. The hardest part is convincing other women to talk when I have committees without another experienced woman in them. Inexperienced men talk whether they know what they're talking about or not, but the women won't. And it sets the tone for the men to talk among themselves. So that's on, if I take control to summarize or to add points, sometimes all of them think I'm squelching debate. So I've spent a lot of time, some terms, getting even one other woman to talk, because that shifts the tone for us in that committee.
Wow, that's really, it's really interesting. Susan talking about mansplaining there. It sounds like you have to deal with that right there in the State House. Still. Well, I have a feeling that's probably something that we all maybe have in common, is having to deal with mansplaining. Let's see, Bridget Labrie. All right, Bridget Labrie is a member of the board of the Mascoma Regional School District. No, Mascoma Valley Regional School District. I got it. She graduated from Mascoma Valley Regional High School. She went on to pursue degrees in childhood studies, teaching, healthcare, business administration, and she returned. She came back to her community, and she's taken on an active role, not just on the school board, but also coaching junior high volleyball. And most recently, she serves as the cemetery sexton. So thank you so much for joining us, Bridget.
Thank you for inviting me. So yeah,
Oh, and Bridget, it's just a little quiet. I wonder if you can...
I can move closer.
Yes.
So I did start, let's see, it's been almost 3 years now with the school board representation, and I can so nicely thank Kate Stewart for that one, because I'd heard a lot of feedback. So, you know, it started with the question of, I grew up here, I keep hearing feedback of what's going on in our community. How do I make change in that community, and where do you start? And so a lot of that was go on the school board and have discussions. It's been a huge learning experience. You know, things move kind of slow. I'm not sure if anyone else has noticed that in that arena. But, you know, it's been great. I think that there's been a lot of change, and if anything, the frustrations that I was hearing that was bringing me onto the school board, I've heard more about the positive changes in the district and in the community. There's so much support in Mascoma for the school, especially, and as a community. So it's been really interesting, and it's one of those things that I may change directions, but it's kind of hard to step away once you get involved. So we will see what happens when March comes around.
All right, fair enough. And I can absolutely relate to the idea, probably all of us can, of how things can move so slowly sometimes. That's the thing about democracy, right? It's not always a quick process. Okay, now I have to look back at my notes so I can see who is next. And next up, let's see, Marina looks like she's having some technical difficulties, so we're going to come back to her if she's able to rejoin. So we're going to move on to Wendy Piper. Wendy Piper is one of our current Grafton County Commissioners. I get to serve with her as a member of our county elected officials, but she represents Enfield, Hanover, and Lebanon on the County Commission. She previously served in the New Hampshire State House for 4 years, where she was a prime sponsor of Willa's Law, which I wanted to say it's particularly meaningful to me since Willa's mom is a close friend, and she and I served together on the Lebanon Middle School PTO for the last several years. So when I read that about you, Wendy, I just want to say made my heart, it was important to me.
Very different. Thank you.
Wendy also has a PhD, just like Susan was talking about earlier. She was a member of the faculty at Dartmouth College. So we're so glad that you could be here, Wendy.
Thank you. So it's interesting, since you mentioned higher education, I guess I would start with that and say that my PhD is in English. And so it might be woman dominated. And so I would say a couple things I might differ. I'm a few years behind Susan, in sort of breaking through in terms of women in leadership roles. I've had a few. Currently, I'm the vice president of the New Hampshire Association of Counties. I should become the president, although we changed the bylaws. So, I should become the president shortly. I enjoy that immensely. And I've taught for 32 years, most recently at Dartmouth in small seminar style classes. So I've had that experience. The legislature, and then now I'm currently vice chair of the Board of Commissioners. And I guess I would say that I think I sometimes I tend to be the kind of person, and I notice this about myself since graduate school. That's when it sort of started to come out. I have a hard time not expressing myself. I have a hard time, keeping things to myself. And between that and my almost 6 foot height, I think that leadership might be something that in some ways comes easy to me. On the other hand, it can be intimidating. That in my Yankee background, of being quite direct, I guess I would say. And I would just bring up one event that I thought of this afternoon. I'm not going to name any people or any organizations, but I think it was my first term, might have been my second term in the House. I was a co-chair with a gentleman on a new organization that we started for the Democratic Party, and it didn't go well at all. In terms of the sharing, as I understood what we were supposed to do, the sharing of responsibilities, and And I talked to Susan, who put up with me probably for about an hour one night on the phone as I told her the entire story, and she gave me some tips. And so I guess I enjoy leadership roles, and I come behind Susan, who was more of a path breaker.
That's a great story, Wendy. And I love how you just brought in the topic of mentorship and the role that women play in opening doors for other women. I've been thinking about that lately. Next up, we have Kate Plumley Stewart. Kate Plumley Stewart currently serves as the chair of the Enfield Selectboard. Her professional days are spent working in supply chain for a certain flour company, and also working on her family farm. So you can even find her, I don't know, maybe chasing a cow or a pig wearing a suit jacket from time to time. She served for 4 years as a school board member for the Mascoma Valley Regional School District and was instrumental in organizing the vote that ultimately resulted in a new junior high and high school that is a real point of pride for Mascoma. Thanks so much for being with us, Kate.
Thanks. It's hard to believe now, but for a long time during my life, I was completely afraid to speak up and hardly spoke during school. And I thought my only options were to be a mom and a teacher. And there's nothing wrong with being a mom and a teacher, but I just couldn't picture myself. So I was like, well, I'm going nowhere in life because this isn't me. And to be honest, both the ideas were kind of depressing. So my life changed my freshman year of high school when my English teacher, Nancy Grout, was like, well, you could be anything you want to be. You could be like a lawyer. And it blew my mind. No one had, because when you come from a certain environment where your mom is a teacher and a lot of the moms stay at home, you don't realize there are other opportunities. So the importance of being around women who directly tell you you can do something totally different and amazing is super important. And then pretty soon, you know, I got invited to go to Model Congress. And still there was something, you know, wrong because I accidentally won a seat on student council after they shoved me on stage. And I think the teachers knew that, right? They knew I couldn't do public speaking. They knew I was terrified. And so they went a little step further and they tossed me in an improv class. And that was life-changing to learn how to walk into the middle of the room, how to hold yourself up and how to speak to people and really how not to be afraid. And it's something that I work with folks on all the time, but especially women. You know, if I walk into the middle of a room or I take the women with me. You know, it is so important to invite people. I went to school in Boston. I went to Northeastern, and I really felt very, very equal there. And I came back here and I ran not thinking I would win a seat on the school board and became in my mid-20s the chair of the school board. And it was really eye-opening, the horrifying sometimes things people and violent things people would say to, particularly men, you know, to tell somebody that you'll kill them if their child like gets under the school buses. It's really, so it was very, very hard for me and to learn how to process that. So when women come to me and they tell me these stories, I have a lot of empathy for them. And I'm not like, oh yeah, I've been there, like, and just brush it aside. I'm like, sit with me, talk with me. How do we approach this? What are the tools in the toolbox? And like Bridget said, I take people with me. So when you say to me, I've always wondered what it would be like to run for office. And I'm like, when do we sign you up? So I think, and that's how I met a lot of you, right? Like Wendy ran for office, and I always try my best to show up for other women because I have had such a fabulous opportunity given to me by women. Barbara Tremblay made sure I had guidance when I was a very young school board chair. And, you know, I've never had a strong woman who wouldn't teach me or take me with them.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. And I see we've got Marina with us. Marina, are you hearing us now? And
yes, I can hear you all. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. My apologies. Sorry about that, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Great. All right. Well then, so glad that that's working, Marina. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to introduce Laurel, and then Marina, you can be our final introduction. So let me go ahead and introduce Laurel. Laurel Stavis is also a member of the Lebanon delegation to the New Hampshire State House. She's finishing her first term. She serves on the Municipal and County Government Committee, and she's been a very strong advocate for the city of Lebanon. That's one thing as a city councilor that I have really appreciated. She has been committed to the city for quite some time, and she has also is currently serving as the board chair for the Listen Community Services. Laurel has a huge heart for people in need and for our entire community. She formerly worked at Dartmouth College, and she was honored with the Institute of International Education's Outstanding Service Award. And she has gotten to work on international programs. So a little special thing you might not know about her is that she's a graduate of the New England Conservatory of Music, and she performs with several chamber music groups in the Upper Valley. Thank you so much, Laurel.
Ah, you stole my line, Karen.
I'm sorry.
But first of all, I want to thank Sue and Karen for inviting me to be here with you this evening. I have to be honest, I've never really thought of myself as a leader, but in getting ready for this evening's conversation, I made myself stop and consider what leadership means to me and how I've been so fortunate to have had opportunities to see leaders in action. So I was trained as a classical musician, as a singer, if you can imagine. And some of my earliest inspirations were women who stepped out onto the stage to let their voices be heard through music. That was mind-blowing. And I think I found my personal sea legs through this experience. I feel incredibly lucky to have spent years in that field, doing what I love most with colleagues I respect. And I've found a different way to use my voice now, but it's still doing what I love with colleagues I respect and admire. And I think that's the essence of leadership, to find what you love, have the determination to do it, and work with others to bring it to fruition. Whether it's classical music, business, writing, art, athletics, just find what you love and find others who love it too. The reason I think this is what defines leadership is because when you're engaged in doing what you love and doing it with others, you have to step up. You have to take a stand. If you're in a string quartet, you're always going to have a solo. In a relay race, you're going to take the lead some point. And in business, you have to try new things to succeed. All of these things force you to stand out, to use your voice and claim your space, which I think is a really critical thing for women and is something that's really hard for us to do. So I feel fortunate to be a performing musician because that's something I had to learn very early on in a way that was culturally and socially accepted for women to do this, to be out there singing. But one of the things I found that I love is New Hampshire. I love the way it feels. I love the way it looks. I love the way people care about one another. And I love our quirky independence. So having this opportunity now to work for a place I love and being able to share it with others is a source of just great joy to me. And if that's what leadership is, then I can't get enough of it.
That's great. That's really inspiring, Laurel. I love that. Great reflections.
I want to hear Laurel sing. Maybe not.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Let's sing together sometime. You probably have.
That would be fun. All right, Marina, I'm so glad that you have joined us. So I'd love to introduce Marina Liot. She is entering her senior year at Dartmouth College. She has taken on numerous leadership roles in student groups such as Women in Business and also the Dartmouth Investment and Philanthropy Group. She is the former moderator for the Lebanon High School Student Council, which is basically like the chair of the board. Which is an elected position, and she served as the student representative to the Lebanon School Board. Marina is a young woman leader, and at just 21 years old, she's already been involved in quite a lot of leadership roles. And in addition, of course, I have to brag because she's also my daughter. So, Marina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mom. Is the topic how we define leadership or characteristics of leadership?
We're doing our introduction, so you're welcome to offer your opening introduction.
Yeah, definitely. So as my mom mentioned, when I was in high school, I was the moderator of our council, and I kind of chaired the board there. And it's about 20 students who are representatives of each class. And I think what really influenced my leadership style is a summer camp that I attended for Model United Nations, which I was pretty involved with during high school. And kind of the slogan, or the really the main theme of that leadership training is the best delegate brings out the best in others. And the best delegate is an award that you can win at the end of the conference. And so I think that mantra, kind of like the best leader, really brings out the best in others, and is always kind of thinking and listening about all of the ideas that everyone has, and is really trying to lead in a way that brings everyone's ideas together. That really drove my leadership when I was a senior in high school, and still now, especially when I was moderator. I really tried to make sure that I was listening to the ideas of our kind of new representatives who were freshmen, and then also just everyone who was on the council. So nice to see you all. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Marina. And I remember that. And I think that's a great slogan. The best leader brings out the leadership of others. And we've talked about that. So I'd love to get into, let's see, how about this? Why don't we start out with this? Who is a woman in leadership you admire, whether currently or from the past? And this is just like round robin. I just want to, quick answers. And I guess go ahead and raise your hand, and let's just go ahead and not be too formal about this. Who wants to start?
I'll start. So I, at one point in my life, I had a wonderful career at Wellesley College, which is, I'm sure you all know, is women's college. And I worked directly with the president there, who at the time was a woman by the name of Nan Cohan, who went on to become president of Duke University. Nan is a woman of towering intelligence and capability, and can be absolutely terrifying if you don't know her. You have to sit on the edge of your seat just to keep up intellectually with the things that she's saying. And I remember working with Nan on a speech that she gave once, which was very important to her. And she said she wanted the title of the speech to be "A Community Worthy of the Name." And we talked about this, and I listened to her thoughts on it. And I had never thought about a community before until I heard her speak about it. And it rang so true to me that any community, you have to prove that you're a community to be worthy of the name. And so I listened to her speech on this, and I worked with her closely for about 5 or 6 years, and I've never learned as much in any 5-year period in my life as I learned with Nan Cohan. And I am forever grateful to her. I'm grateful to her for scaring the daylights out of me for fear that I wouldn't be able to keep up. I'm grateful to her for inspiring me. And I'm grateful to her for providing me opportunities I never otherwise would have had, and for doing that for countless women throughout the decades.
All right, Nan Cohan.
I love the
Who
name.
else? Yeah. Go ahead, Sue. Yes, go ahead. I think whoever wants to go next, just
First of
just
all,
talk.
I want to point out that Marina has my seat. Okay, so that's my usual seat when I'm over at Command Central. Eleanor Roosevelt. I want to talk about Eleanor Roosevelt for just a few minutes. That she was a first lady, but she was her own person, and I think many first ladies have modeled themselves in her likeness. She was an activist. She took on civil rights, and really actually was one of the first to stand up, for African Americans, communities of color that were suffering in our country. So I appreciate the fact that she took on her role and used it as a way to lead from the White House as a woman, and show that it wasn't just about, it's not just, respectfully, for her, it wasn't just a domestic role. She saw this as a way to move an agenda forward, and she chose civil rights as the agenda she moved forward. And she also took on that part of what made her husband, well-liked and he was like a 4-term president. He was in there. But he was a great communicator. He took the opportunity to have fireside chats, to talk to the country and keep them updated on what was happening. And it was a time that's very similar to where we are right now, struggling with a lot of uncertainty. So I just appreciate that she took her role and turned herself into, well, as it turns out, she was an activist, that she stood up for civil rights, that she moved forward for communities of color back then, and she became a real leader as a communicator, and she was also somebody who, during the Great Depression, and we know this, she turned to libraries, and she said, look, the libraries are core places in our communities where you might not be able to have everything you need or you want right now, but, and Wendy, I'm looking to you as somebody who's you had books stacked behind you earlier in your PhD in English, but she talked about the role of libraries and communities and bringing people together, having resources and opportunities. And I think that that's just another part about Eleanor Roosevelt was fascinating to me. So I'll stop there.
That's really neat. Let's see, Bridget, I think I saw that you were ready. Yeah.
Recently I had finished Michelle Obama's book. And of course, we're all super familiar with, who she was at the White House level, but listening to her story and where she came from, it related with me, and that, you don't have to come from a family with a lot of wealth and power. You can work your way up, and you surround yourself with the right people, such as a few people here that I know personally, and I'm glad to meet the rest of you. And you just, you keep going, and it's hard work and dedication, and you can go through a lot of obstacles. So, and, in some cases it brings you all the way to the White House and in leadership positions that have a lot of influence. And I think she's also an example of, the just poise and amazing etiquette when she was there. So.
That's great. Thank you, Bridget. Let's see, Sue, you had called out Wendy Piper. What do you think? A woman you admire?
Sorry, Wendy.
Yeah, that's fine. I just very quickly, I had to move. My internet connection out in my study is unstable. And unfortunately, Karen, I missed your comments after my opening comments, so we could catch up maybe later. But I'm going to say Hillary Clinton. She is, well, let's see. I admire her intelligence, first of all, her courage, her perseverance. I don't know if I can think of somebody else, another woman who had been so put upon by, male opinion, during the Clinton presidency. And one other thing that I admire about her is I have to say I admire her complexity. I'd call it complexity, complicatedness, her migration, her story. I mean, she was a Goldwater girl, for goodness sake, and her father had, what was it, a fabric store or something. So she came out of a small business family like I have. One side of my family is small business, and that teaches you a particular type of value. And then she learned, became interested in other sorts of values and issues, as I understand it, while she was at Wellesley. And now, just her migration in terms of an individual, her political principles, and of course her political party. And I just have always found her to be a very strong woman leader. I learned so much from her, and every time she's, we get the chance to hear her interviews and stuff, and she just always surprises me, I think, with her depth.
Oh, Sue is raising her hand. Since she's the candidate, she gets to
she's the candidate.
Overrule.
This is for everybody. And this is, pandemic, like Netflix, Hulu, and really we should just be reading books. But there is an exceptional 3-part documentary on Hillary Clinton, how she grew up.
Yes.
Her, role in Arkansas as the first lady, and then evolving to a presidential candidate. It is,
I know.
it's an inside view. It's just a really excellent inside view. It's really well done. And I was completely mesmerized. There were things that I learned. I've respected, valued, and voted for her, but there are things that I learned about her during that just made me feel just compelled to me even more as to why, as a woman, she's somebody that, she was brave. She stepped out in a place where, a lot of people may, it's hard to do, but she stepped out and did it for the rest of us. So I'm thankful. So Hulu, 3-part series,
Okay.
well worth the watch.
Okay.
Not that I
All
should
right,
be promoting
we got
television, just saying.
Thank you.
Susan Almy, who is a woman that you admire?
I've got a double there, and it's a story. It starts with Donna Sitek, who was the first woman speaker of the House, and Terry Norelli and I and a number of other women, that some of whom are still there also, came in when she was speaker. And what was special about her was that the House has a large series of regulations, and the Republican leaders did not particularly obey them all the time. She did. Whatever it cost her, she did. We voted in an income tax in the House during that term, and I watched her at the podium look at us with her jaw dropping and completely shocked, and then pull herself together, and within 1 minute was going through the process of sending it to the Senate.
Wow.
A Republican male would have, and you were there when we had Republican speakers, so you know what I'm talking about is totally different. And she also, I was in her office twice when I did something that wasn't right. We had conversations about it. And she was really kind and mentoring about that. I was a Democrat, though they didn't worry about Democrats in those days because we were never going to win. So, but Terry also grew up under that, and Terry learned something about leadership by women. And she also firmly obeyed the rules, no matter how much sometimes it cost me rather than her, because I was chair of Ways and Means during part of that, and I kept losing bills because I was at the end of the alphabet. And the rules said that we were going to go by the alphabet. So, she modeled herself on Donna Sitek, and I modeled myself on Terry and Donna Sitek in being a chair. And I really respect both of them a great deal.
That's great. All right, Marina, you are, nope, let's see. Oh, Kate, I was going to call on you next, and then Marina, you're on deck, okay?
Sure. So I have two probably not quite as well-known folks, but they equally inspire me. And one is Nadia Bowles-Weber, who is a pastor who came out of drug addiction to really people, and she inspires me every day. And the other one is Glennon Doyle. Both of those two women for making themselves vulnerable and for leading by example through daily challenges and inspiring other women and really all people to be their authentic self.
It's Glennon Doyle. We can do hard things. Yes, we can. That's great. Marina, a woman you admire.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely say my my mom, definitely. But I was going to say, like Bridget mentioned earlier, because I'm also reading Becoming Michelle Obama, and I think really kind of struck me is her focus on inclusivity throughout her time at the White House. I think she's really inspired a generation, and particularly like my generation, it's kind of coming of age. And I think it was really notable and very moving, her focus, like her ability to remain true to her values, even during kind of the intense attacks from during like kind of when during the campaigns. She kind of is famous for her "when they go low, we go high," and I think really her ability to remain true to herself is really clear, and that's definitely one of the reasons I think she's someone that I really look up to.
That's great. And a good motto, especially during campaign time. It's good to remember that. Okay, I'm going to do a lightning round because we have already gone, we were having such a good conversation, but we have a lot to get through. So lightning round, 10 seconds or less. What is an accomplishment that you are proud of? And I'm going to say this already. I'm going to do all the qualifying right now. I know that we always work in teams and it's never our own accomplishment. I know that, you know, this is all the things that you would say, 10 seconds or less directly. What is an accomplishment that you are proud of? And I'm going to start with, Wendy Piper.
Okay, I'm going to say Willis Law, and I'm going to describe very briefly what it was. We had a death of a toddler at a daycare center here in town in Enfield, and I worked with Kara Clark and her husband at the time, and Laura Sappho, our county attorney at the time. And we drafted a bill that closed a loophole that would improve improve oversight of daycare facilities, and it would also increase penalties. So it was extremely difficult, but I'm very proud of it.
Thank you, Wendy. Laurel Stavis.
Okay. This doesn't have anything to do with New Hampshire, I'm afraid. But one of the things I'm really proud of is helping to stand up a brand new private liberal arts university in Kuwait City, in the middle of the desert, really, in a place where a university had never existed before, and of course where women were not allowed to attend. But at this university, women did attend. And in fact, there was a woman who was president of that university. So,
wow, that's a great story. Thank you, Laurel. All right, Kate Plumley Stewart.
17 years of community advocacy, including passing the Mascoma High School renovation bond and founding Friends of Mascoma with my team to benefit local students and families.
That's great. Thank you, Kate. Let's see, Bridget Labrie.
I would say earning my MBA while I was working full-time.
All right, props for that. Susan Almy.
Taking.
I know you have too many things. You have to pick one.
No, I'm only doing one thing. Taking the New Hampshire government through the Great Recession.
Yeah.
With a team.
With a team,
yes.
Yes.
I was pretty
Thank you,
much
Susan.
whipping my committee.
All right, Marina Leo.
Yeah, I would say kind of starting the Lebanon High School Council grant program. So we're able to start that program. Then student groups on at the high school could apply for funding, and then that could be approved by the student council.
Excellent. All right, Sue Prentiss, you get the final word here.
A little known fun, not really fun fact, serious fact, is that I led the transition from paper patient care reporting by EMTs and paramedics to an electronic real-time system. And this was before many hospitals were doing that in-house. And we were one of the first 5 states in the nation to do it, and we were the second state to put data into a national database so that we could actually look at what the trends and base our decisions on how we were going to change care by what was actually being done. But here's 2 things that it's important today in New Hampshire is, number one, when you think about opioids. So the Department of Safety was regularly called upon by different governors since we've been facing this crisis with substance abuse to daily provide reports using that database to understand that real-time data to say, where are these calls coming in? Okay, is Narcan being used? Are people, are they dying? Are they being transported? They're using it as a way of a surveillance system. The second piece is going to be COVID. And we actually used this during H1N1 where we're able to look and say, where are fevers, spiking? Okay, where are people reporting, coughs and different illnesses? So it is, it's like one of those behind the scene fun facts, but it's not even a fun fact. It's pretty serious, but I'm really proud that in New Hampshire that I led on this, that it's in place, and that it makes a difference every day, and it's used at multiple levels of government to inform decisions.
That's great. I'm going to also do a brag for Sue too, because there are defibrillators in 3 automatic external defibrillators that are in 300 schools. Is that right, Sue?
No, over 300. So there's the AED. We have an AED in every public school in the state. And I was part of the commission that made sure that happened, but schools were well on their way. It was the rural health grant that I wrote, 2 of them, that brought over 300 AEDs, some of which went to schools, but many of them, the one that's in City Hall, they went all over the state into areas that they never would have been previously to increase survival from cardiac arrest in rural areas.
Wow.
And I remember that at a Lebanon basketball game. I think it was down on the seacoast or something, but there was a Lebanon high school kid who had an incident, or it was a student who had an incident, and because there was an AED there, they were able to get timely care. And I had never thought about the importance of AEDs until that, and now come to find out I'm working with Sue, and that's something that she was a part of. I'm really proud of Sue for that.
And I got to see that young man walk at his prom. Now how in Lebanon we have the red carpet? That same young man, I got to see him. My daughter he was a class behind my daughter, I believe, but I got to see him walk that night with his date through the red carpet, and I took a picture and I sent it to the first responder that was in the school gymnasium that applied that AED. It was no secret by that point. We weren't violating any patient care. It wasn't about that, but it was so memorable to see how those machines really make a difference.
All right, so I think I'm going to do one more question here that I'm going to ask everyone. I want to move to something serious. Something that came up as we were talking about our introductions was topic of a lot of the challenges that we've faced as women in positions of leadership. And we know that inequality is a real problem. Gender inequality is a real problem. We know that there's other inequalities that our societies and our structures are filled with inequality. Tonight we're talking about women in leadership, and so I want to brainstorm as a group here and hear from this group about thoughts that we have about how we can eliminate inequality for women. And Sue, I'm gonna wrap up, or I'm gonna wrap up with you, so you get to have the final word, and we'll kind of use this as our closing thoughts here, because I want to keep it to the time that we had talked about. So let's hear from everyone about some thoughts on how we can eliminate inequality for women. And let's see, Kate, do you want to start things off?
Yeah, I'm gonna just throw it right out there. We need childcare so that all women can go to work if they want to, because childcare is a huge problem here, and we need health insurance. Everybody has to have health insurance. You shouldn't have to work so that you can be healthy. Yeah. And everybody knows that if you want to be home as a mom with your family, or you want to be an entrepreneur as a woman, that you sacrifice either your health insurance or a huge portion of your check to get health insurance. And the same thing goes with childcare. I'm sorry, but people may not like this, but most women are the default parent. And it is very hard to be the default parent, to set up the appointments and to do the care and to continue in a leadership role, because it takes so much time. And I don't know if you've seen, I've had a child that's kind of wandering in and out of the sideline here.
Really?
Yeah, and she does need me, right? And my husband is a wonderful partner, but at the end of the day, those pieces like filling out school forms, they all come to me. And so just to have that piece taken care of, where I knew I could get childcare and I knew I could get healthcare, because our family has gone without healthcare, so that I could pursue a gig and do a job that I wanted to do. And that is a really, really hard decision to make. and it's wrong.
It's powerful, Kate. It's really powerful. Well, Bridget Labrie, how about you?
The Enfield crew.
The Enfield crew.
Right. What is
Wendy,
so, I mean, you're kind of looking for some of the challenges we have to overcome. And I guess it's going to be, how do we, the thought that comes to my mind really is how do we make more noise in a way that is positively received, but still forceful? Because I think, I think that's still, and I think Susan kind of mentioned it too, right? If you're still kind of mansplained in many ways when you do speak up and you might not know what you're talking about, or you're shut down because, and really, in my career thus far, I haven't found it to be an issue with gender as much as age. And so I fight the age issue where I'm just, oh, you're too young, you don't know what you're talking about, we'll handle this. And that's come from all genders, above me. So I think it's a matter of how do you get messages out there and make a little noise in a way that really brings people together and not continue this kind of divided situation we have.
I love that idea of making noise. That's really good. Laurel Stavis.
Yeah, I was going to say that I have some techniques I could show you for making a lot of noise that I learned at the conservatory. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that it's not so much an individual thing as it is a structural thing.
Yeah.
I spent several years working in the kind of war-destroyed country of Kosovo, where in the late 1990s, they put together a new constitution for their country. And the first thing they did was to put a gender quota in that constitution, so that a full 30% of all members of parliament had to be women or minorities, had to be by law. They have made such strides in women's rights, in minority rights in that country in their very brief life because of that single structural change. And I realize that that's not going to happen anytime soon, if ever, here in the United States. But I would just ask you all to think about what the world would look like if the world operated on a commonly understood rule that a substantial number of the people making decisions for the rest of us had to be women or had to be minorities. It'd be a very different place.
Wow, I had no idea that you had been in Kosovo, Laurel. So interesting to hear about everyone's experiences. I want to continue the conversation for 3 more hours, but that'll have to be for another night. Wendy Piper.
Yeah, I was going to ask if I could follow on that because it just sort of clicked something in my mind. I think that I would want to follow on what Kate said and also Laurel in the sense of there needing to be structural change. Kate mentioned policies, family leave, insurance, childcare, but I really was interested beyond that in what Laurel had to say. I wasn't sure what she meant by structural, and now I really understand. And so I guess what I want to say is, I think that women's equality comes along, I guess for me, with universal equality, and so education, adequate wages, and so all people can rise together, I think. But specifically about women, I have had 2 experiences recently in my teaching, or recently over the last 10 years in my teaching. And I had, just when Laurel mentioned Kosovo, I had a student from the former Yugoslavia, a woman, and also a student from Somalia. And she was the only Somalian student on campus. And we used to laugh because we spent some time together. She's very bright and was always in my office, you know, talking about, you know, assignments, and then that would just get into books and everything else. And we used to laugh together because she wore her full traditional garb. So she had a hijab. And can somebody remind me of what the body covering is?
The burqa.
Burqa, thank you. And so we would walk together over for lunch, and she would just be in this full flowing, you know, and I saw her, gosh, probably 5 years. I think she hung around campus for a while. I saw her probably 5 years after she had her class with me, and I didn't know it was her. She was tall. What I saw was a tall, attractive African woman in jeans and a t-shirt and with short hair. And I just saw this woman walking by me. She was in a hurry, and she just had the sweetest, most open smile on her face. I think she knew I didn't know that it was her. And just watching, and then she contacted me not too long ago. And told me about what she's been doing and how she's been succeeding. And I think what Laurel is saying, this isn't as deep as what Laurel said in terms of, you know, imagine if women were our leaders. That one other quick thing that I want to touch on, because I want to be fair about this question. And that is that I said that, you know, I do tend to, you know, I've never had a problem speaking my mind, and sometimes that can be a problem. And I'm very tall. And so I, you know, have always been kind of on the confident side. But I'll say one other thing about that is that I've always lived in a countercultural way. So I've had, you know, I've been in a non-traditional partnership for 35 years. Going back into, you know, the 80s when it was downright dangerous. And the reason that I bring it up is because it's always sort of put me at odds it was baked into the cake. I've always been an outsider. I mean, I noticed one of the topics was intersectionality. I've always been an outsider. And so I think that it might sound kind of ironic to say it, but it's almost sort of maybe facilitated, you know, some personality traits in a way that I haven't always had to be maybe victimized a little bit by men. I've never had expectations of them, and they've never had expectations of me. And so, and I'm sorry, I too much TMI. But I mean, even professionally, you know, I just have always lived outside, and there's some benefits to that.
Well, that's really interesting, Wendy. It's not TMI. This is why we're here. So thank you for sharing.
It's complicated, isn't it, Sue?
Let's see. Marina.
Yeah, I think that kind of going off of the point that Wendy had made on intersectionality, I think I definitely felt that when I was especially the moderator of the council at Lebanon High School, kind of the intersection of being very young and a woman of color and trying to lead students and trying to interacting often with you know, people who had positions of a lot more authority and were, you know, more experienced than I was definitely a bit challenging. And I think one thing, kind of a reflection that I took away from that and kind of that influences the way that I lead, or just the way that I'm involved in groups now, is I always try to, if I'm in a group where there aren't very many women involved, especially like the investment group that I'm a part of at Dartmouth, there definitely it's majority men. I try to, or especially when I was a freshman, got together all of the women and we had lunches and dinners and just got together and had informal meetings, because I think that there's something really special about just kind of having all of the women in a group kind of band together and then just support one another. So I think that's something that I try to do now, especially at Dartmouth, just kind of have informal meetings or just really try and support the women who are in the same groups that I'm in, especially if it's just minority women. I really try to make a point to do that.
Great, thank you, Marina. right, Susan Almy.
Oh my. I've been outside in another kind of way for a very long time, and kind of in time warps, because I went away from the US for 25 years and then came back and was trying to deal with the changes. And I find a lot of progress over the years, and I think a lot of it had to do with us finally getting the right to control our own reproduction, which started to become a real thing in the 50s. Before that, it was really, really difficult for most women. You had to be an elite woman in order to, for almost all women, to be able to forge your own path. And my nephew is a house husband. And he's a very high-level financial consultant. But he also essentially was the person in the house when the kids came home, before the kids came home from school, when they were still climbing on him through now when one of them is in 4th grade. and I've known a lot of younger men that talk a lot more to other women, not just their wives if they've gotten married, and as equals. I've seen a lot of change in this over the years, and especially with Donald Trump there. If he'd come in 20 years ago, I think our whole society would have been shifting back towards women are supposed to be at home, the way they did after World War II. There was a massive shift of women. Yes, you were helping out in the war effort. Now the only thing, you have to go back and be a housewife because your husband's the one who's going to earn the money. And it was huge at that point. And I really think that there's been, they keep on talking about it, the white suburban housewives hate Trump. And part of it's just that he doesn't think women should do anything except take care of men. And I think we have come quite a way where I think we're going to have the last great trouble with this. I mean, childcare is really, really important, but is women workers in low-paid jobs, they have some of the worst problems in trying to deal with things. They end up usually as a major part of the support of the family financially, and they are usually in jobs that do not tell them when they're going to be able to come to work and when they can't. They have to come to work, and when they can't come to work at the last minute. And when the kids are sick, they're usually the ones that are called to come and get them out of the school, except they can't leave their job or they lose the job. I really think they've got the worst problems that we have to deal with now with legislation. The other parts, I think, are more cultural. For instance, in Afghanistan, they also enacted a law that said that I think it was 15% of the legislature had to be women. And it didn't do any good, except that the women are always afraid for their lives. There, you need to have some level of societal reform going on before you can make something like that work. And I think that we've got it happening. It's just that it's very slow. For me, it's pretty much like the arc of history bending towards justice. It takes generations to do it. It took generations to get Martin Luther King Day through.
Yeah.
It
And
happened
it's,
my second term, and the first term I looked at these disgusting old men standing there at the dais and saying and repeating all of these canards from the FBI about King, and thought, we just have to wait till they die on us.
That must have been so difficult, Sue.
Mm.
Susan, that must have been so difficult to have to listen to that in the face of who he was.
Yeah, but you've probably listened to some stuff in there that you thought
Yeah.
was pretty awful too. It comes with a job.
Yeah.
well, it's really,
It comes with a job.
it's encouraging to hear, Susan Almy, you're the elder stateswoman here, and it's encouraging to hear you talking about your perspective over time, because it is still hard, but it's encouraging to hear that there's progress, and that the work of every generation adds up and makes and lifts the next generation higher. So I think that's really important. I want to give the last word here to Sue before we sign off for the night. And I apologize to anyone watching who had a question. We're going to be able to keep these Zoom town halls going, hopefully after next Tuesday, all the way until November, and maybe even our next state senator, Sue Prentiss, will continue them while she's in office, because there's a lot to talk about. So Sue, we'd love to hear from you about your thoughts on eliminating gender inequality.
So there's a story. When I was in high school, I was a student athletic trainer. I've always been interested in medicine. I watched that show. Do any of you remember Emergency on Saturday nights?
Oh, yeah.
Joy, they were that inspired an entire generation of paramedics in this country. But I was one of those little kids who was watching that show. I wasn't that little, and I'd say, when I grow up, I'm going to be a paramedic. So I was interested in medicine. I'm in high school, and I get one of the ways I can get involved is become a student athletic trainer. So I learned how to tape ankles and how to respond to emergencies on the field with, the first aid training that I've had. And I travel with the teams. So we're at a home game, and it was male and female teams, but this happened to be a home game, and there was a football player who was injured, and I went out into the field. This must have been my freshman year, actually. I went out into the field, and I was told by an older white coach, this is not a place for little girls. You need to go back to the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And that was a formative moment for me. I remember being so tearful about it when I got in the car with my mother. But she's 88 years old now, and we still talk about this. She remembers his name. She remembers that moment. But it drove me forward in everything that I did. Yeah, I went to college. I became a paramedic. And along those lines, although I've always worked in the field alongside of men, at those moments, and actually every, and it is a male-dominant field, every man that I worked alongside of has always treated me as an equal. Okay, but it is the structural piece that a number of you have spoken to, is where I have felt that inequality. It's not, that partner working at that time. It is the structure over the entire, it's society or the organizations where that wall not just kind of, but was apparent to me. I served, and before I talk about what I think is one of the solutions that we need to address here in New Hampshire to embrace all of this, I was the only female on a 33, it was a panel of 33 men, and then there was myself, to build the new, sounds really exciting, ambulance automotive standards through the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. And I remember, being in that room and having to be loud at times to be heard. But I will respectfully say that I was loud and I was heard. So I wanted to, just kind of sort of bring it home, saying I started in that place, and it drove me right through to where I am today. When I worked as the chief of the fire academy, I wore the same tie that the men wore. They gave me a pixie tie. I said, no, wear what he's wearing. However, they were all so long that they didn't fit. So one of my coworkers gave me his 7-year-old's clip-on, and that's what I wore. But here's what one of the things I think that's really, we started off the conversation by talking about investing in gender. And that is, it's investing in gender, it's investing in race, it's investing in equality. But as for tonight's discussion, and impacts all of these, we need to have an Office of Inclusion and Diversity in the state of New Hampshire. It is the one place. You'll see that like universities and other organizations have these, but why can't we have one place that my dog's just about to start barking, that shepherds this all through? Contracts, when contracts are being vetted, RFPs are being prepared and contracts are being vetted by governor and council. Okay, how, what is the implication or what is the oversight related to that, as it has to do with, gender, and it has to do with race, employment, boards and commissions that people are, our residents are appointed to, that are making policies. We need to be, and decisions, we need to be looking at all of this through a different lens. And I think the most important way that we can get at this is to put someone in charge of, that's their mission, that at the state level, it'll get to childcare, it'll get to jobs, it'll get to wages, it'll get to fairness in contracts that are awarded. We need to have a comprehensive look. And when you put somebody, and we did this with the opioid crisis, when you put somebody in charge of that global view, all of this becomes addressed. So that's my solution. But it started on a football field when I was a freshman in high school. And so I know Karen's gonna get to say the final thanks, but it's been great to hear from you all tonight. I've appreciated all of the different perspectives and your willingness to, to open up and share not just who you are, but a part of your soul, because we've all done this. And then I want to challenge Laurel. Laurel, I'm into show tunes, but if you want to have a sing off sometime, you're right down the street, I'll come to your house and we can enjoy ourselves. Okay, Karen?
I'm in for that too.
All right, let's have, yeah, we're in. We're gonna get Karen stuff.
I'm thinking this was so good. We need to continue this and definitely do a post-COVID lunch, a post-COVID sing-off. I love all of these ideas. And I want to echo what Sue said and thank everyone. I think one of the best things that Laurel started it off when she said that earlier tonight, she said she hadn't thought of herself as a woman in leadership until we asked her if she would be willing to participate in this panel. And I think that happens for a lot of women, is that they don't see themselves that way. And I just want to say, I certainly see all of you this way. And I love hearing about how many times people talked about sharing leadership and making sure that the other people whether it's making sure other people in the room are there, or whether it's holding the door open for people to join the room. I think that that's a really powerful aspect that we as women in leadership can do. And something that makes me feel so encouraged is knowing that all of you are women in leadership here in our communities, in the Upper Valley, in the state, in our schools, and wherever you are. And so it's exciting. We have this election on Tuesday, so this is just a reminder. I know we're all voting, and I'm particularly excited to see Sue and to bring her leadership to the New Hampshire State Senate. And so I look forward to Tuesday, and it's been a great campaign so far, and we're here to the home stretch. So 5 more days. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you, all of you women in leadership, for everything that you do.
Let's keep it rolling.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Great.